The rumor mills are going nuts, speculating on what is happening in Verbova. We're going to try to tease out the reality from the rumor. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's August 3rd. No, I'm sorry. It's September 1st, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get right into it. Okay, first, we're taking a look at the control map, and this is again updated as of yesterday afternoon, with the only substantial change being the situation in the Sebrysky forest. I make no apologies for mispronouncing it. This seems to be maybe a subset of the forest near Crimea, but you can see that it actually shows Russian forces advancing their control, again, as Ukrainian forces withdraw. I, as always, am going to acknowledge that this is pretty low value area defended by some relatively sparse, low density of troops. You can see they're from kind of the cobbled together Storm Z units. These are something between a PMC and Wagner's era assault groups. So I think you're looking at small numbers of troops covering wide areas in this northern front. And I think the troop density is getting less and less because we're seeing more and more troops allocated to Verbove and Robotine along this axis here. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I think there is definitely a tendency, a trend for Ukraine to do less public acknowledging of its the situation there, simply because they don't want to tip off Russian forces to what's really happening, maintaining operational security, etc. But you can see how intense the fighting is simply by the deployment of some of these units, right? You zoom in here to Staromayorsk, and you can see there's a few brigades and regiments, maybe 6 to 8, but you could see here, you're looking at almost a dozen trying to surround Robotine and Verbove. But we're going to talk a little bit about where exactly these forces are deployed according to some rumors in a little bit. But first, of course, I wanted to talk about the fact that if you've been on the live stream, you probably have heard the news that I have launched something I've been working on for almost a year. This is Strike Gum pre-workout gum. I've been working with a manufacturer right here in the U.S. in Denver to find a way to take an entire scoop of pre-workout and concentrate it into just a single piece of gum. When I was in Afghanistan, we used to, I had to stuff cans of energy drinks into my cargo pockets to maintain focus and maintain my energy levels on these like 12-hour combat patrols, and then have the energy to go and come back, do all my reports, and then work out. It was a lot. And just having to chug a gross energy drink after gross energy drink just made me feel bloated. And it was a lot of sugar and a lot of pointless calories. Strike Gum is, I think, just 5 calories and sugar-free. It's also vegan if you're into that. But the best part of all is that 50% of the profits from this first production run, I'm donating to charities that aid Ukrainian civilians who've been injured or displaced in the conflict. So if you are interested, go to strikegum.com or you can check the link in the description down here. I'm also going to stick a card up there. So get your Strike Gum today. Anyway, taking a look at the combat map, you could see that Ukrainian forces are reporting success in the Novodanyelivka, Novoprokopivka direction. So again, it's almost like they're moving towards Tokmak, and where there's less discussion about the situation in Verbova, which itself probably it may be indicative that there's a lot that still is undecided. That they're not seeing any formal advances or anything that Ukraine is willing to publicly claim. Of course, Russia continuing to put some forces on the offense. There's a report of 25 combat engagements, but you could see they're only publicly acknowledging that they're taking place in the northern Kharkiv area and along the Donetsk axis. And that's sort of it. But we know that there's, again, a lot of attacks and counterattacks happening here. I think that it's just sensitive enough that Ukraine isn't talking about it. There is some public acknowledgement, again, of the areas that have been shelled by Russia. You're looking at, again, a huge swath here of shelling, which again makes sense given that both sides are probably trying to cover withdrawals, conduct preparatory fires for counterattacks. Just the intensity in this area is likely extremely intense. Now, I went on to X, formerly known as Twitter, and we just tried to get some of the rumor mills around Verbove. This is coming to us from Guillermo Pulido. Looks like a Spanish language account focused on Ukraine. And this, again, there's no attribution to this beyond that, but this shows that there was small Ukrainian recon teams began to operate on the outskirts of Verbove, and that light infantry have followed this path towards the town itself. It also is reporting that Russian elite forces are putting a lot of pressure attacking into the southern part of Robtina. So I think while along the west flank, you're looking at Russian forces assuming a more defensive posture. So it seems like what Russia doesn't want is for this circle to expand out continually. I think the idea would be to try to pressure this southern front through Novoprokopivka in order to prevent Ukrainian forces from really establishing a significant presence in Verbove, right? If they did, it would be sort of a salient, like a bulge in the lines. Looking over at another rumor account we were able to find, this I thought was even more interesting. This actually depicts what the account, let me get you a name for it. I think it's called Where is Russia Today? And they are claiming that Russia is engaging in what it's calling stacking in an effort to provide some level of relief to its formations, but that it's actually positioned a number of its air assault units along the road to Tokmak. And when we pull up the control map, I'll show you what I'm talking about, right? So Tokmak down here, and you can see this roadway. Remember, Tokmak, if we pull up the fortification chart, Tokmak is heavily defended. And now is, again, as we talked about, this being one of the most dangerous highways maybe in the world, you certainly look at a map like this and you see why. For Ukrainian troops, it is a literal shooting gallery of these units stacked up one after the other, ideally probably each one of them digging fighting positions, preparing to provide defense in depth. I think it's fair to say that Tokmak is likely a key hub and key center for this Ukrainian counteroffensive. What's more interesting to me is that it's almost like Verbove is deprioritized. 2 reconnaissance brigades, a Spetsnaz brigade, and a motor rifle regiment is actually fairly light. But as you guys can see, if Ukraine can penetrate these lines and start to roll Russian forces by owning these defensive fortifications, these troops here are going to have a tough time. And I think that's probably why Russia has created this defense in depth. Because look, if let's say these units, right, remain in defensive positions, and if Ukraine is able to capture these trenches in Verbove and push into Russian forces from this eastern flank, well, you can see that these units will be in trouble, right? They'll be taking fire from the north and the east, but you're going to have naturally built into the formation, so to speak, you're going to have these other units that can counterattack and push these flanking elements, right? A sort of counter flank. And so I think this is part of it. I think what they can't do in a formal They don't have time to build a formal north-south fortification network. And so they're creating one with units. They're literally just deploying some of these regiments, which, bear in mind, just because a headquarters is there, especially for Russian formations, they could be at various levels of strength. This could be one regiment, one like actual regiment's worth of troops. But they may be creating, if they can't create a fortification of trenches and concertina wire and dragon teeth, they may be creating it out of soldiers. The idea being that if Ukraine pushes from the east, they will meet this wall of soldiers that can flank and come in around. Anyway, guys, this is just speculation. Bear in mind, again, X is the rumor mill. And so let's not take it to mean more anything other than speculation. Anyone can make a slick looking graphic, right? It doesn't even have to be a person. It can just be some random AI graphic. Be like, generate me a bunch of random Russian unit names. There's so many Russian units that these all sound believable. If you told me these were all made up, I would also be like, yeah, of course, a separate covering brigade. That sounds like something someone just made up. 417th Reconnaissance Battalion. Sure, buddy. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, that's all I had for you guys. Be sure to check out strikegum.com, and a special thank you to all of our Colonel tier members at combatvetnews.com. Thank you to our Lieutenant tier members. Again, I really couldn't do this without you guys. And of course, thank you to all the members at combatvetnews.com that support the channel and enable me to do this. See you in the next one. Cheers.